The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Kensington Palace, casting long shadows across the polished marble floors. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, stood quietly in her private study, her fingers tracing the edges of a handwritten letter that had arrived just hours before. The palace was unusually quiet for a Tuesday morning, with most of the staff attending to their duties in the lower wings of the grand residence. William had left early for a series of official engagements in Birmingham, his schedule packed with visits to local charities and a youth center that supported underprivileged children. Catherine had watched him from their bedroom window as his convoy disappeared through the palace gates, noting the tension in his shoulders that had become more pronounced in recent weeks. The weight of royal duties, combined with the constant media scrutiny and the challenges of raising their 3 children in the public eye, had been taking its toll on both of them. The letter in her hands was from Dr. Margaret Harrison, Catherine's longtime friend and confidant who now worked as a pediatric oncologist at Great Ormond Street Hospital. The contents of the letter had shaken Catherine to her core, not because of any personal medical concern, but because of what Margaret had shared about a young patient whose story had deeply moved her. 8-year-old Emma Thompson had been battling leukemia for 2 years. Her mother, Sarah, had written countless letters to various organizations seeking support, not for medical treatment, which was being provided by the NHS, but for something much simpler yet equally important. Emma's greatest wish was to meet Princess Catherine, whom she had admired since seeing her visit a children's hospital on television. The little girl had been collecting newspaper clippings and magazine articles about Catherine's charitable work, creating a scrapbook that she kept by her bedside during her treatments. What made Emma's story particularly heartbreaking was that her father, Sergeant Michael Thompson, had been killed in Afghanistan 3 years earlier while serving with the British Army. Sarah was raising Emma and her 6-year-old son, James, on her own, while also caring for her elderly mother, who suffered from dementia. The family's struggles were compounded by Emma's illness, and Sarah had reached out to Dr. Harrison in desperation, hoping that somehow her daughter's wish might be granted. Catherine set the letter down on her mahogany desk and walked to the window overlooking the palace gardens. The autumn leaves were beginning to turn, painting the landscape in shades of gold and amber. She thought about her own children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, and how different their lives were from Emma's. While her children had every advantage and opportunity, Emma was fighting for her life while dealing with the loss of her father and the uncertainty that came with her mother's overwhelming responsibilities. The princess had always been deeply committed to her charitable work, particularly causes involving children and families facing adversity. Her patronage of various organizations had given her insight into the struggles that many families endured, often far from the public eye. But Emma's story struck her differently, perhaps because of the personal connection the child felt toward her, or perhaps because of the timing. Catherine had been reflecting more deeply on her role and the impact she could have beyond the ceremonial aspects of royal life. She picked up her phone and called her private secretary, James Whitmore, who had served the royal family for over 15 years. James was known for his discretion and his ability to arrange even the most complex royal engagements with minimal notice. "James, I need you to clear my schedule for Thursday afternoon," Catherine said, her voice carrying a determination that he had come to recognize when she was particularly passionate about something. "Of course, Your Royal Highness. May I ask what this concerns?" James replied, already pulling up her calendar on his tablet. "I want to arrange a private visit to Great Ormond Street Hospital. They're the young patient I'd like to meet, and I want this to be completely off the record. No press, no official photographers, just a personal visit." James made a note, understanding immediately that this was one of those occasions when the princess preferred to act from her heart rather than through official channels. "I'll contact the hospital directly and arrange everything discreetly. Will you need security?" "Minimal security, James. I want this to feel as normal as possible for the child and her family." After ending the call, Catherine returned to the letter and read it again, focusing on the details about Emma's personality that Dr. Harrison had included. The little girl was described as brave and optimistic despite her circumstances, always trying to cheer up other children in the ward and never complaining about her treatments. She loved to draw and paint, often creating pictures of princesses and castles that she would give to the nurses and doctors who cared for her. The more Catherine learned about Emma, the more she felt compelled to do something meaningful for her. This wasn't about fulfilling a royal obligation or generating positive publicity for the monarchy. This was about one human being reaching out to another during a time of struggle and uncertainty. Catherine spent the rest of the morning researching childhood leukemia, wanting to understand better what Emma and her family were going through. She read about the treatments, the side effects, and the emotional toll that such a diagnosis takes on entire families. She also looked into support systems for military families who had lost a parent in service, understanding that Emma's family was dealing with multiple layers of grief and challenge. By the time William called during his lunch break, Catherine had made several decisions about how she wanted to approach the hospital visit. She wanted to bring something special for Emma, but not something so expensive or elaborate that it would feel inappropriate. She also wanted to find a way to support the family beyond just a single visit. "How are your engagements going?" Catherine asked when William's call came through. "Quite well, actually. The youth center here is doing remarkable work. They've helped over 200 young people find employment or educational opportunities in just the past year." William's voice carried the enthusiasm he always had when discussing projects that were making a real difference in people's lives. "That's wonderful. Listen, William, I wanted to talk to you about something when you get home tonight. It's about a hospital visit I'm planning for Thursday." "Of course. Is everything all right? You sound thoughtful." Catherine smiled at how well he knew her moods, even over the phone. "Everything's fine. I just received a letter about a young patient who's been through quite a lot, and I think there's something we can do to help. I'll be home by 7. We can talk about it over dinner." After William's call, Catherine made her way to the nursery, where her own children were having their afternoon lessons with their governess, Maria Santos. George, now 10 years old, was working on a history project about British explorers, while 8-year-old Charlotte was practicing her French pronunciation. 5-year-old Louis was engaged in a mathematics exercise that involved counting and sorting colorful blocks. Watching her children, Catherine felt a familiar mix of gratitude and responsibility. They were healthy, secure, and surrounded by love and opportunity. Yet she also felt the weight of teaching them about empathy and service to others, values that she and William considered essential to their development as both individuals and future representatives of the monarchy. "Mummy," Charlotte looked up from her books and ran to embrace Catherine. "Miss Maria says we're going to learn about different countries and their cultures next week. Can we learn about France? I want to practice speaking French with real French people someday." "That sounds like a wonderful idea, darling," Catherine replied, hugging her daughter close. "Perhaps we can arrange for you to speak with some French children through video calls. There are many ways to connect with people around the world." George joined them, showing his mother a map he had been coloring to illustrate the routes taken by famous British explorers. "Did you know that some explorers were only a few years older than me when they started their adventures, Mummy?" "Is that so? And what kind of adventures would you like to have, George?" "I want to help people like you and Papa do. But maybe I could travel to places where children don't have good schools and help build them better ones." Catherine felt a surge of pride at her son's thoughtful response. At 10 years old, he was already beginning to understand the concept of service and the privileges that came with his position. "That's a very noble goal, George. There are many ways to help people, and education is certainly one of the most important." Louis, not wanting to be left out of the conversation, abandoned his mathematics blocks and wrapped his arms around Catherine's legs. "Mummy, when I grow up, I want to be a doctor and make sick children feel better." "That's a beautiful thought, Louis. Doctors do very important work helping people feel better." As Catherine spent time with her children, she found herself thinking again about Emma Thompson and the contrast between her children's secure, comfortable world and the challenges that Emma and countless other children face daily. It reinforced her determination to make Thursday's visit meaningful and to find ways to create lasting positive change in the lives of families like Emma's. That evening, as promised, William returned home by 7 o'clock. The family gathered in their private dining room, a more intimate space than the formal dining areas used for official functions. The children chatted excitedly about their day, while Catherine and William exchanged knowing looks about the conversation they would have once the children were settled for the night. After dinner, the family spent time together in the sitting room, with George reading aloud from a book about wildlife conservation while Charlotte and Louis listened, occasionally interrupting with questions or observations. These quiet family moments were precious to both Catherine and William, providing a sense of normalcy amid their highly scheduled and scrutinized public lives. Once the children had been tucked into bed with their bedtime stories read and goodnight kisses exchanged, Catherine and William settled in the library with cups of tea. The room was filled with books collected over generations of royal family members, creating an atmosphere of history and contemplation. Catherine shared Dr. Harrison's letter with William, watching his expression change as he read about Emma's situation. She could see the same emotional response in him that she had felt earlier that day, a mixture of sadness for the family's struggles and determination to help in whatever way possible. "This is heartbreaking," William said after finishing the letter. "To lose her father so young and then face such a serious illness, and her mother managing all of this alone." "I've been thinking about it all day," Catherine replied. "I want to visit her on Thursday, but I also want to think about what we might be able to do for the family beyond just a hospital visit. This little girl has been through so much, and her mother sounds like she's struggling with overwhelming responsibilities." William set down the letter and looked at Catherine with the admiration he had always felt for her compassionate nature. "What did you have in mind?" "Well, I thought about bringing something special for Emma, maybe art supplies since she loves to draw and paint. But I also wondered if we might be able to connect her family with some longer-term support. Her mother is caring for Emma, her 6-year-old son, and her mother with dementia. That's an enormous burden for one person. We could reach out to some of the military family support organizations we work with," William suggested. "They might be able to provide practical assistance or connect the family with other resources." Catherine nodded. "I also thought about the possibility of arranging for Emma to visit us here at the palace once she's feeling stronger. Not for a formal event, but just as a special experience for her and her family." "That's a lovely idea. We could show her the gardens, maybe let her meet the horses if she's interested." Children often find that magical. As they continue to discuss their plans, Catherine felt a deepening sense of purpose. This was the kind of work that truly mattered to her, connecting with people on a personal level and using her position to create positive change in individual lives. While the ceremonial aspects of royal duties were important, it was these personal connections that gave her the greatest sense of fulfillment. The next morning, Catherine woke early and spent time in her private office making preparations for the hospital visit. She contacted several organizations that specialized in supporting military families, gathering information about services that might be available to Emma's mother. She also reached out to a trusted contact and art supply company, arranging to have a custom art kit created specifically for Emma. Nothing too extravagant, but high-quality supplies that would encourage her creativity and provide a positive outlet during her treatment. James Whitmore had worked efficiently to arrange the hospital visit, coordinating with Dr. Harrison and the hospital administration to ensure that everything would go smoothly while maintaining the privacy that Catherine had requested. The visit was scheduled for Thursday afternoon, during a time when the children's ward would be relatively quiet and Emma would be feeling well enough for visitors. As Thursday morning arrived, Catherine found herself more nervous than she usually was before official engagements. This wasn't about protocol or public appearance. It was about connecting with a child who was facing enormous challenges and trying to bring some joy into her life. Catherine had always been natural with children, but she felt the weight of Emma's admiration and didn't want to disappoint her. She chose her outfit carefully, selecting a simple but elegant blue dress that was professional yet approachable. She wanted to look like the princess that Emma admired, while also being someone the little girl could feel comfortable talking to. Catherine also brought along a handwritten card and the art supplies she had arranged, carefully wrapped in cheerful paper. The drive to Great Ormond Street Hospital took her through parts of London she didn't often visit in her official capacity. Looking out the window of her car, she observed the everyday life of the city. People hurrying to work, children walking to school, elderly individuals sitting on benches feeding pigeons. It reminded her of the vast number of people living their lives away from the spotlight, dealing with their own joys and challenges with courage and resilience. When Catherine arrived at the hospital, she was struck by the energy of the place despite the serious nature of the work being done there. The staff moved with purpose and kindness, and even in the corridors, she could hear the sounds of children playing and laughing. It was a reminder that hope and healing often flourished in the most challenging circumstances. Dr. Harrison met Catherine at a private entrance and escorted her to the children's ward. "Emma has been so excited since we told her yesterday that you were coming," she said as they walked through the corridors. "She's been working on a special drawing for you, and she insisted on wearing her best dress despite being in the hospital." Catherine felt her heart flutter with anticipation and emotion. This little girl's excitement and effort to prepare for their meeting was both touching and humbling. As they approached Emma's room, Catherine took a deep breath and prepared herself for what she hoped would be a meaningful encounter for both of them. Dr. Harrison gently knocked on the door before opening it slowly. "Emma, sweetheart, your very special visitor is here." Catherine stepped into the room and immediately saw Emma Thompson sitting up in her hospital bed, her face lighting up with pure joy. The 8-year-old had indeed dressed in her best clothes, a pink dress with small flowers that her mother had brought from home, and her hair was carefully braided with matching ribbons. Despite the medical equipment around her and the obvious signs of her treatment, Emma's eyes sparkled with excitement and wonder. "Your Royal Highness," Emma said softly, attempting a small curtsy from her seated position. Catherine could see that the little girl had been practicing this moment, probably for days. "Please call me Catherine," the princess said warmly, moving closer to the bed. "And there's no need for formal curtsies. I'm just here as a friend who wanted to meet you." Emma's mother, Sarah Thompson, stood quietly near the window. Catherine could see the exhaustion in the woman's face, the weight of months of worry and sleepless nights caring for her daughter while managing her other responsibilities. Sarah was younger than Catherine had expected, perhaps in her early 30s, with the same gentle eyes as her daughter, but marked by the premature lines that come from enduring too much stress too young. "Mrs. Thompson," Catherine said, extending her hand warmly. "Thank you for allowing me to visit Emma today. Dr. Harrison has told me so much about both of you." Sarah shook Catherine's hand, clearly overwhelmed by the surreal nature of having the Princess of Wales in her daughter's hospital room. "Your Royal Highness, I can't believe you're really here. Emma has talked about nothing else since yesterday. This means more to us than you could possibly know." Catherine turned her attention back to Emma, who was clutching a folded piece of paper in her small hands. "Dr. Harrison mentioned that you love to draw and paint. I brought something I thought you might enjoy." She handed Emma the wrapped package of art supplies. Emma's eyes widened as she carefully unwrapped the gift, revealing a beautiful wooden box filled with watercolor paints, colored pencils, sketchbooks, and brushes. "This is the most beautiful art set I've ever seen," she whispered, running her fingers over the supplies with reverence. "I heard that you're quite the artist," Catherine said, sitting in the chair beside Emma's bed. "Would you mind showing me some of your work?" Emma's face flushed with pleasure as she reached for a small portfolio that her mother had brought from home. "I drew these while I was getting my treatments," she said, opening the folder to reveal a collection of colorful drawings. "This one is of you visiting children at another hospital. I saw it on television and wanted to draw it so I could remember it." Catherine examined the drawing carefully. Despite Emma's young age and the circumstances under which it was created, the artwork showed remarkable attention to detail and genuine artistic talent. The drawing depicted Catherine talking with children in hospital beds, and Emma had carefully included flowers and rainbows around the edges, creating a scene that was both realistic and hopeful. "Emma, this is absolutely beautiful," Catherine said, her voice filled with genuine admiration. "You've captured so much emotion in this picture. Have you been drawing for a long time?" "My daddy taught me to draw before he went to heaven," Emma replied matter-of-factly, the way children often discuss profound topics. "He said that drawing was a way to show people how much you care about them, even when you can't be with them." Catherine felt her throat tighten with emotion. The wisdom in this child's words, spoken with such innocence and acceptance, was more profound than many adult conversations she had experienced. "Your daddy sounds like he was a very wise man." "He was the best daddy in the world," Emma continued, showing Catherine another drawing of a soldier in uniform standing next to a little girl. "This is me and Daddy. I draw pictures of him so James doesn't forget what he looked like. James is my little brother, and he was really little when Daddy died." Sarah Thompson wiped away tears as she listened to her daughter explain the drawings with such composure. Catherine could only imagine the strength it took for this young mother to hold her family together while watching her daughter fight such a serious illness. "Emma," Catherine said gently, "I brought something else for you." She handed the little girl the handwritten card she had prepared. "This is for my children, George, Charlotte, and Louis. They wanted to send you a special message." Emma opened the card carefully and read aloud the simple message that Catherine had helped her children write. "Dear Emma, we heard that you are very brave and strong. We hope you feel better soon and that you know there are children thinking about you and sending you good wishes. Your friend, George, Charlotte, and Louis." "They wrote this for me?" Emma asked, holding the card close to her chest. "They did indeed. In fact, they asked me to tell you that they would very much like to meet you someday when you're feeling stronger." The conversation that followed was unlike any official royal engagement Catherine had ever experienced. Emma asked thoughtful questions about the royal children, wanting to know what they liked to do and whether they enjoyed drawing as much as she did. She told Catherine about her brother James and how she was teaching him to paint flowers because flowers made everyone happy, even on difficult days. "Sometimes when I'm getting my medicine and it makes me feel sick, I close my eyes and imagine that I'm painting in a beautiful garden," Emma explained. "I think about all the colors I would use and how pretty everything would look. It helps me not think about feeling bad." Catherine was struck by this child's resilience and wisdom. At 8 years old, Emma had developed coping strategies that demonstrated remarkable emotional maturity. "That sounds like a wonderful way to handle difficult times. Would you like to tell me about some of the gardens you imagine?" For the next 20 minutes, Emma described in vivid detail the imaginary gardens she created in her mind during treatments. She spoke of roses that changed colors with the seasons, butterflies that carried messages between flowers, and trees that grew different fruits on every branch. Her imagination was boundless, and Catherine found herself genuinely captivated by the little girl's creativity and optimism. Sarah Thompson watched the interaction with amazement. She had been worried that Emma might be too overwhelmed or nervous to speak naturally with the princess. But instead, her daughter was more animated and joyful than Sarah had seen her in weeks. Catherine's genuine interest and warm manner had put Emma completely at ease. "Your Royal Highness," Sarah said quietly during a moment when Emma was showing Catherine how to hold a paintbrush properly, "I can't thank you enough for this. Emma has been so excited about meeting you, but I never imagined you would spend so much time with her or be so normal and kind." Catherine looked up from Emma's art lesson. "Mrs. Thompson, it's I who should be thanking you. Emma is an extraordinary little girl, and spending time with her has been a privilege for me. Her strength and creativity are truly inspiring." As their visit continued, Catherine learned more about the Thompson family's daily life. Sarah explained how she balanced caring for Emma during her treatments with managing 6-year-old James's needs and caring for her mother with dementia. The logistical challenges were overwhelming. Coordinating medical appointments, managing side effects from Emma's treatments, ensuring that James felt loved and attended to despite the focus on his sister's illness, and providing care for her mother whose condition was steadily declining. Some days I feel like I'm barely keeping my head above water, Sarah admitted. But then Emma will draw me a picture or tell me a story about one of her imaginary gardens, and I remember why I have to keep going. These children are my whole world. Catherine found herself deeply moved by Sarah's strength and dedication. This young woman was managing responsibilities that would challenge anyone, doing so with grace and love despite her own grief over her husband's death and worry about Emma's health. Mrs. Thompson, I hope you won't mind me asking, but do you have support from family or friends? Caring for everyone while dealing with Emma's illness must be incredibly demanding. Sarah hesitated, clearly not wanting to seem like she was complaining. My mother-in-law helps when she can, but she lives quite far away and has her own health issues. We have some wonderful neighbors who occasionally help with James, and the hospital staff has been amazing. But most days, it's just us managing everything together. Catherine made a mental note of this conversation, already thinking about the support organization she and William had discussed. No family should have to navigate such challenges alone, especially when one parent was dealing with the additional grief of military loss. Emma, who had been quietly working on a new drawing while the adults talked, suddenly looked up with excitement. Catherine, I just thought of something wonderful. Why get better? Maybe I could paint a real garden for you. Not just imagine it, but actually paint flowers and butterflies on a big canvas. That sounds absolutely lovely, Emma. I would treasure a painting created especially for me by such a talented artist. And maybe I could show James how to paint too, and he could make something for your children. He's really good at painting animals. The genuine enthusiasm in Emma's voice as she planned future activities was both heartwarming and heartbreaking. Catherine could see the hope and determination in this little girl who refused to let her illness define her dreams and aspirations. Dr. Harrison, who had been checking on other patients, returned to the room and quietly observed the ongoing conversation. She was pleased to see how relaxed and happy Emma appeared, chatting with Catherine as though they were old friends rather than princess and patient. Emma has been one of our most positive patients, Dr. Harrison told Catherine. Even on her most difficult days, she finds ways to encourage other children and thank the staff. Her attitude has been remarkable throughout her treatment. I can certainly see why, Catherine replied, watching Emma carefully arrange her new art supplies in the wooden box. She has a wisdom and strength that would be impressive in anyone, let alone someone so young. As the visit continued, Catherine found herself thinking about her own children and the lessons she could share with them about Emma's courage and resilience. She realized that this meeting was changing her own perspective on challenges and priorities in ways she hadn't anticipated. Emma suddenly stopped organizing her art supplies and looked directly at Catherine with serious eyes. Catherine, can I ask you something important? Of course, Emma. You can ask me anything. Do you think my daddy can see me from heaven? I know he's watching over me and James, but sometimes I wonder if he knows about all the things that have happened since he went away. The question was asked with such earnest curiosity that Catherine felt the full weight of responsibility in answering thoughtfully. Emma, I believe that people who love us never really leave us completely. Your daddy's love for you and James is still with you every day in your memories and in all the good things he taught you. When you draw those beautiful pictures or take care of your brother, that's your daddy's love showing through you. Emma nodded solemnly, considering this response. I think you're right. When I paint flowers, I feel like Daddy is helping guide my hand to make them pretty. And when I help other kids here feel better, it feels like something Daddy would want me to do. Sarah Thompson had to turn away momentarily, overcome by her daughter's profound understanding of love and loss. Catherine reached over and gently squeezed Sarah's hand, offering silent support and understanding. The afternoon passed more quickly than anyone had expected. Catherine had initially planned to stay for perhaps 30 minutes, but she found herself reluctant to leave Emma's bedside. The little girl's stories, artwork, and insights had created a connection that felt genuine and meaningful beyond the circumstances that had brought them together. As their time together drew to a close, Emma presented Catherine with the drawing she had been working on during their conversation. It showed two figures, one tall and one small, standing together in a garden filled with colorful flowers and butterflies. Above them, a figure in military uniform watched protectively from a cloud decorated with rainbow colors. "This is you and me in one of my imaginary gardens," Emma explained. "And that's my daddy making sure we're safe while we talk. I wanted to give this to you so you'll remember our time together." Catherine accepted the drawing with hands that trembled slightly with emotion. "Emma, this is the most precious gift anyone has ever given me. I will treasure it always, and I promise you that every time I look at it, I'll think of your brave spirit and your beautiful imagination." As Catherine prepared to leave, she made a decision that surprised even herself. "Emma, I have an idea. How would you like to come visit me and my children at Kensington Palace when you're feeling stronger? We have beautiful gardens there, and I think Charlotte and Louis would love to learn some of your painting techniques." Emma's face lit up with joy beyond anything Catherine had seen during their entire visit. "Really? I could visit a real palace and meet your children?" "Absolutely. I'll work with your mother and Dr. Harrison to arrange it for a time when you're feeling well enough to travel." Sarah Thompson looked stunned by this offer. "Your Royal Highness, that's incredibly generous, but are you certain?" "I'm absolutely certain," Catherine replied firmly. "Emma has given me a gift today that's far more valuable than she realizes. Inviting her to visit us is the least I can do in return." As Catherine said her goodbyes, Emma reached out and hugged her tightly. "Thank you for coming to see me, Catherine. You're even nicer than I imagined, and I imagined you were the nicest person in the world. Thank you for letting me meet you, Emma. You've taught me important things about courage and kindness that I'll never forget." Walking back through the hospital corridors with Dr. Harrison, Catherine felt profoundly changed by her experience with Emma and her family. The little girl's strength, creativity, and wisdom had reminded her of the most important aspects of her role as a member of the royal family. The ability to connect with people on a human level and to use her position to bring hope and joy into lives touched by difficulty. The drive back to Kensington Palace gave Catherine time to process the emotional intensity of her afternoon with Emma Thompson. She found herself looking at the familiar London streets through different eyes, thinking about all the families like the Thompsons who were quietly facing enormous challenges with courage and dignity. The contrast between her privileged world and the reality that so many people live daily was something she had always been aware of, but Emma's story had made it feel more immediate and personal. When Catherine arrived home, she went directly to the nursery where her children were having their afternoon tea with Miss Maria. The sight of George, Charlotte, and Louis chattering about their day while enjoying sandwiches and fruit suddenly felt like the most precious thing in the world. They were healthy, safe, and surrounded by love and security, advantages that Catherine realized she could never take for granted. "Mummy!" Charlotte jumped up from the table and ran to embrace Catherine. "How was your visit to the hospital? Did you meet the little girl who wanted to see you?" Catherine hugged her daughter close, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair and feeling grateful for this simple moment of connection. "I did meet her, and she's the most remarkable little girl. Her name is Emma, and she's 8 years old, just like you, Charlotte. She loves to draw and paint, and she's incredibly brave." George looked up from his sandwich with interest. "Is she very sick, Mummy? Papa told us that some children in hospitals are fighting serious illnesses." "Yes, George. Emma is quite ill, but she's receiving excellent care from wonderful doctors and nurses. What's most amazing about her is how she uses her creativity and kindness to help herself and others feel better, even during difficult times." Louis, ever the curious 5-year-old, climbed onto Catherine's lap. "Mummy, did you tell her about us? Does she want to be our friend?" "I did tell her about you, and she would very much like to meet you all someday. In fact, I've invited her and her family to visit us here at the palace when she's feeling stronger." The children's excitement at this news was immediate and genuine. Charlotte clapped her hands together, already imagining the visit. Oh, Mummy, that's wonderful. I could show her my paintings, and maybe we could paint together in the garden. That's exactly what I was thinking, Catherine replied, touched by her daughter's enthusiasm to share her own interests with someone who had much less. Emma loves to paint flowers and gardens, so I think she would enjoy seeing our gardens very much. As Catherine spent time with her children that afternoon, she found herself observing their behavior through a new lens. She noticed how naturally they shared their toys and treats with each other, how they showed concern when one of them was upset, and how they included everyone in their games and conversations. These were values that she and William had worked hard to instill, but seeing them manifest so naturally gave her hope for how they might interact with Emma when she visited. When William returned home that evening, he immediately sensed that Catherine's hospital visit had affected her deeply. During their private dinner together, after the children had gone to bed, she shared every detail of her afternoon with Emma and Sarah Thompson. William, this little girl has been through more than most adults experience in a lifetime, yet she's managed to maintain such optimism and creativity, Catherine said, showing him Emma's drawing of the two of them in the imaginary garden. Her wisdom and strength were truly humbling. William studied the artwork carefully, noting the attention to detail and the obvious love that had gone into creating it. This is extraordinary work for an 8-year-old. You can see her personality and spirit in every line. I invited them to visit us here when Emma's feeling better, Catherine continued. I hope you don't mind that I extended the invitation without discussing it with you first, but it felt like the right thing to do in the moment. Of course I don't mind. In fact, I think it's a wonderful idea. It will be good for our children to meet Emma and learn from her example of courage and resilience. Catherine set down her tea and looked at William seriously. There's something else I want to discuss with you. Sarah Thompson, Emma's mother, is managing an incredible amount on her own. She's caring for Emma during her treatment, raising a 6-year-old son, and caring for her mother who has dementia. She's doing all of this while dealing with her own grief over her husband's death in Afghanistan. That's an enormous burden for one person, William agreed. What kind of support does she have? Very little, from what I could gather. Some help from neighbors occasionally, and her mother-in-law when possible, but mostly she's managing everything alone. I keep thinking about all the families like theirs who are struggling without adequate support systems. William could see where Catherine's thoughts were leading, and he admired her instinct to look beyond individual acts of kindness towards systemic solutions. Are you thinking about ways we might be able to help families in similar situations? Exactly. Meeting Emma and Sarah made me realize that there are probably countless military families dealing with combinations of grief, medical challenges, and overwhelming caregiving responsibilities. What if we could develop a program that provides comprehensive support for families facing multiple crises like this? The idea energized both of them as they discussed the possibilities. They talked about partnering with existing military support organizations, medical charities, and social services to create a network that could provide practical assistance, emotional support, and respite care for families dealing with complex challenges. We could start by researching what programs already exist and where the gaps are, William suggested. Then we could use our platform to bring attention to the need and help coordinate resources. I'd also like to find ways to connect families going through similar experiences with each other, Catherine added. Sarah seemed so isolated in her struggles. Knowing that other people understand what she's going through might provide comfort and practical advice. As they continued to plan, Catherine felt a sense of purpose that went beyond the immediate desire to help Emma's family. This could be the beginning of something that would make a real difference in the lives of many families who are quietly struggling with circumstances beyond their control. The next few days passed quickly as Catherine followed up on the ideas she and William had discussed. She contacted several organizations that worked with military families, children's medical charities, and support groups for caregivers. The response was overwhelmingly positive, with many expressing interest in collaborating on a comprehensive support program. Meanwhile, Dr. Harrison kept Catherine updated on Emma's progress. The little girl had been telling everyone about her visit from the princess, and her mood and energy had noticeably improved since their meeting. Sarah Thompson had also expressed her gratitude repeatedly, saying that Emma's excitement about the upcoming palace visit was providing her with motivation during difficult treatment days. Catherine also began planning for Emma's visit to Kensington Palace. She wanted the experience to be magical and memorable while also being appropriate for a child dealing with a serious illness. She discussed the plans with her children, who were equally excited about meeting Emma and sharing their home with her. "Mummy, should we prepare special games for Emma?" Charlotte asked during one of their planning conversations. "I want to make sure she has the most wonderful time possible." "That's a thoughtful idea, Charlotte. What kind of games do you think she might enjoy?" "Well, since she likes to draw, maybe we could set up an outdoor art station in the garden where we could all paint together. And we could show her the horses and maybe take a walk through the garden so she can see all the real flowers." George contributed his own ideas for the visit. "I could show her the library and some of the history books with pictures of the palace. She might like to know about all the people who lived here before us." Even young Lewis wanted to contribute to making Emma's visit special. "I could show her my toy soldiers and tell her about how brave soldiers like her daddy help protect people." Catherine was touched by her children's enthusiasm and their instinctive understanding that Emma deserved special consideration because of what she had been through. Their excitement about sharing their world with someone less fortunate reinforced her belief that they were developing the empathy and sense of service that she and William considered so important. A week after Catherine's hospital visit, she received a call from Dr. Harrison with good news. Emma had responded well to her recent treatments and was feeling strong enough for a short outing. The doctor felt that a visit to the palace would be possible within the next 2 weeks if arrangements could be made. Catherine immediately began finalizing the plans for Emma's visit. She coordinated with the palace staff to ensure that everything would be ready and that the experience would be as smooth and enjoyable as possible. She also arranged for a photographer to document the visit, not for public release, but to create lasting memories for Emma and her family. The day before Emma's scheduled visit, Catherine found herself more nervous than she had been in years. She wanted everything to be perfect for this brave little girl who had already given her so much through their first meeting. She walked through the planned route multiple times, ensuring that it would be manageable for someone who might tire easily while still providing a full experience of the palace and gardens. That evening, as Catherine was putting Charlotte to bed, her daughter asked a question that surprised her with its insight. "Mummy, when Emma comes tomorrow, will she be sad because our life is so different from hers?" Catherine sat on the edge of Charlotte's bed, considering how to answer this thoughtful question. "That's a very perceptive question, Charlotte. Emma might notice that our life is different from hers, but I don't think she'll be sad about it. From what I've learned about Emma, she's someone who finds joy in beautiful things and kind gestures rather than focusing on what she doesn't have. Our job is to make sure she feels welcomed and loved while she's here. I want her to know that even though we live in a palace, we're just regular children who like to play and have fun just like she does." "That's exactly the right attitude, Charlotte. Emma will appreciate your friendship and kindness much more than any fancy things we might show her." The morning of Emma's visit dawned bright and clear, with perfect weather for spending time in the palace gardens. Catherine woke early and did a final check of all the preparations. Fresh flowers had been arranged throughout the areas where Emma would visit. The outdoor art station was set up with supplies and small canvases, and the kitchen had prepared a special afternoon tea with Emma's favorite foods, which Dr. Harrison had helped Catherine learn about in advance. When the time came for Emma's arrival, Catherine and her children waited in the main entrance hall, all of them excited and slightly nervous about the upcoming visit. Catherine had explained to her children that Emma might tire easily and that they should follow her lead about activities and pace. The car carrying Emma, her mother Sarah, and her little brother James arrived precisely on time. Catherine watched through the window as the family stepped out of the vehicle, noting how carefully Sarah helped Emma, who was wearing a beautiful blue dress and had flowers in her hair. 6-year-old James stayed close to his mother and sister, his eyes wide as he took in the grandeur of the palace. Catherine opened the door herself, wanting Emma's first sight upon entering to be a familiar, friendly face. "Emma, welcome to our home. You look absolutely beautiful today." Emma's face lit up with joy as she saw Catherine, and she gave a careful curtsy that she had obviously been practicing. "Thank you for inviting us, Catherine. This is even more beautiful than I imagined." Sarah Thompson looked overwhelmed by the grandeur of their surroundings, but Catherine quickly put her at ease with warm greetings and introductions to her children. George, Charlotte, and Louis were on their best behavior while also being genuinely excited to meet Emma and James. "Emma, these are my children, George, Charlotte, and Louis," Catherine said, watching as the children greeted each other with a mixture of formality and genuine curiosity. Charlotte stepped forward first, offering Emma her hand. "I'm so happy to meet you, Emma. Mummy told us that you're a wonderful artist, and I can't wait to see your paintings." George followed with his own greeting. "Emma, we've prepared lots of things to show you today, but we want to do whatever you'd enjoy most." Even young Louis contributed to the welcoming atmosphere. "Emma, would you like to meet our horses? They're very gentle and friendly." Emma looked delighted by the warm reception from the royal children. "I would love to meet your horses and see your paintings, Charlotte. And, George, I'd love to hear about the history of your beautiful home." As the group began their tour of the palace, Catherine observed the interactions between the children with great pleasure. Emma, despite her illness, was animated and curious about everything she saw. James, initially shy, began to relax as the older children included him in their conversations and explanations. The first stop on their tour was the family's private sitting room, where Catherine had displayed some of Charlotte's artwork alongside the drawing that Emma had given her during their hospital visit. Emma was thrilled to see her own artwork displayed so prominently and was genuinely impressed by Charlotte's paintings. "Charlotte, these are beautiful," Emma said, examining the paintings carefully. "I love how you painted the flowers with so many different colors. That's exactly how I imagine flowers in my dream gardens." "Thank you, Emma. Mummy told me about your imaginary gardens, and I try to paint flowers the way I thought you might see them in your mind." The genuine artistic connection between the two 8-year-old girls was immediate and touching to observe. They began discussing techniques and favorite subjects, finding common ground despite the vast differences in their circumstances.